Man, this scratch on my nose where I don't even know where it came from just won't heal. But just so you actually know, this will be not just a casual video today once again, but a casual in-depth video. Because people have been asking me, why does it take so long for your iPad Pro review? Well, the reason therefore is that I've used it well over a month just to take everything possible into consideration. And having watched so many other reviews, I just have to say most of them, not all of them, did a pretty poor job because they only judge the device from their own perspective, what their own needs and what their own preferences are, and therefore completely forgot the bigger picture. Because the question for me is not what this can't do and what it can do, but who it works for. That's the big thing, because so many said it's not running on desktop OS like Mac OS or Windows, therefore I just can't do what I want to do. That's true. But they can't do it. I've watched so many reviews out there and people seem to be okay with iOS for their specific needs, because I've seen artists who use the Apple Pencil and do all their job and they get everything done. I've seen musicians who get everything done. I've seen people who said, I just write articles all the time and I want it super small and super portable with a small keyboard. For those it works. And I've also actually seen YouTube video creators who say that this works for them. And obviously there are people who have super huge timelines or super demanding tasks or just need a lot of stuff plugged in. Then something like this is just not for them. That is the easy part. I mean, it had its limitations. And you could also, for example, and this question is absolutely legit, ask, why not just get the normal iPad? Legit. But I see it this way. There are some people who just say, yes, I'm using this mostly as a media consumption device, but I want the best possible, most premium experience. And that's why I'm okay paying more for. That's for those people, and it's for those people who it works for. And I will get into that a little bit later on more. But the detailed part actually will be a little bit shorter because I want to take more focus on who this might work for and who it might not work for. But you can't just, as a YouTuber who's always used Windows machines, say this absolutely does not work. And it's for some people just not supposed to be a Windows laptop or Mac OS laptop replacement. This is something else, but it doesn't mean it can't work for your specific needs. So let's get into the first thing, design and build quality. I mean, yeah, let's get into the first thing. Bendgate is a thing, and I don't even wanna check if mine is properly plain because there was some talk that some came slightly bent from the factory. Mine seems fine, I'm okay with that. Because also, yes, this thing seems fragile from what we have seen. Someone, don't really need to tell who, bend it in half. But it doesn't feel like a very fragile device. I mean, it's super thin, but if you hold it, it feels super well executed, everything feels nice, and it feels solid. Now, if it easier breaks or bends than anything else, I can't tell because I'm not gonna try this, no matter how many people actually asked me. But it feels super nice, and actually about the thinness, I would have been totally fine if this would have been 1, 2 or 3 millimeters thicker and therefore have an even better, bigger battery. Because I mean, battery life is totally fine. I'll tell you later on what I got, but this thing is so ridiculously thin and light that it wouldn't have hurt if it would have been even bigger. But yeah. Here at the top we have the connection for the Apple Pencil that I got like a week ago or so, and I'm trying to incorporate way more, and it actually seems to pay off for me, for my needs, because I use this as a notepad now all the time for my reviews, and I use it in my reviews, and it actually helps me to keep on track since my memory is not the best, at least in some specific things that I want to say. Then we have a really good button layout because we have the volume rocker here at the top, which in my opinion is the smartest solution because then I can't mix it up with the power button, and I'm super happy that in this case the power button is on the left side because, for example, what I bought myself is a pretty cheapo keyboard case for just $30, and I'll actually review this as well. But it has a magnetic function for the screen to lock, but it doesn't work if obviously the keyboard is on those magnets. And therefore, when I usually close it up and for some reason it's always on, it's handy to be able to access the power button still. But the reason why I actually took this case over any other one, and it was the only one that offered that, I mean, I can use the pen, and now I can close it up, as you can see here, and it works out totally fine. But I just wanted to have it safe until I maybe don't use it if I use the iPad. So that's my solution. Like I said, a little bit more about the keyboard case in another review, but I think for 30 bucks it's absolutely worth it, because actually the keyboard is good travel, but yeah, more about that later on. It does a good job. Now, otherwise we have the 2 speakers and mics here on one side, and 2 speakers and USB Type-C on the other side. Type-C, well, we have it, and it's kind of cool, but yeah, you can't really take full advantage of it because the system just doesn't allow it, which is one of those systems limitations. Then we have super small bezels, as you can see, and in my opinion, a wrong positioned Face ID cam. Because most people, especially with this form factor, I would assume use it like this, especially if you want to make a FaceTime call on. So I think the camera here would have just made so much more sense, because usually people, even if you are left or right-handed, if you just grab it up with 2 hands, block the camera. Then it says it's blocked, as you can see here. It tells you to, and then you kind of have to get out of the way. So in my opinion, this would have made more sense, because yes, I've used my old one actually quite a lot like this, but with the new layout and so on, I prefer it way more like this, especially if I use it with the keyboard. And I guess now, like it is, 90% of the people will use it, or I mean 90% of all the time people will use it like this. And also what I've personally wished for, I'm not quite sure if that would have been possible, for a longer range. Because when I'm just chilling in the bed or on my couch or so, let's try this once again, then it's simply, okay, you can know my code, it's not really the real one anyways. Then I would wish for a little bit of a longer range. If I just watch Netflix videos and so on, just turn it on from a longer distance, it doesn't work, so you have to be a little bit closer. Yeah, that's that. Small bezels on the sides. I mean, I thought usually I always say you need quite some space to hold on, but the good thing about iOS is that the screen actually still works like this. I mean, no other system has figured this out so well. So I can easily just hold my finger and still do everything. And it kind of knows if I want it or if it's on purpose or not. So I definitely like that approach. And yeah, Android just doesn't get that so much right. But the next thing, which is something I'm gonna quickly cover, is the display. It gets super bright. I usually use it at a little bit over 50, so like 55%. Oh yeah. Doesn't have something to focus on. And it's super bright. I actually use True Tone now, because I didn't use it in the past, especially on the iPhones, because I don't like it there for some reason. On the iPhones it looks way too yellow, but here actually I have to say it works out really, really well. Night mode I actually use also by now, just because it's sometimes blinding, so it's cool to have all those features. But to get to the display, some people have complained about the fact that the display is not high-res enough anymore. Now, I see it in a different way, because I think the resolution is still fine. I mean, I would have wished for a high resolution, but for getting this kind of 120 Hz smoothness, I'm okay with this resolution, because I think they set the benchmark of the high resolution very early already high. Because, for example, as you can see here, a little bit smaller after all, iPad Air 2 has the same resolution, I mean similar resolution. It changed by now a little bit, but it's not really much higher, especially the DPI, but it's still totally fine. But the quality is top, it's super bright, and the calibration is amazing, and I still like this display a lot. Yeah, there are sharper ones out there, but not really in this segment, what we are comparing it with. So, to get to the speakers, let's actually check those. And I'm definitely not at full volume, because then it would just blow up my mic. Gotta just say, these speakers are amazing. Even if you block maybe one with your hand, they are still free. But it's such a good high quality sound. There is no distortion at the high end. It sounds very warm and full. There are supposed to be like little woofers even inside. But I don't get how they managed to get such a sound of such a thin device. Because this, I would say, beats like 90% of all the 13-inch laptops that I usually used. So super happy with the sound. It's very nice and loud. I mean, it's way louder than anything else, but I've heard also that the 12.9 inch is supposed to be even louder. So I am super happy, because I actually have not paired this up with a Bluetooth speaker yet. Because even if I watch a YouTube video, or especially Netflix or something like that, I never really felt that I need it. Obviously, it's still possible, but absolutely great. Performance is the big thing here. This thing screams, as you can see here. Multitasking works so great. You can switch between these apps with the sides and so on. I absolutely love that aspect with the swipe to the sides. This is just so nice. And I usually use also the gestures and, for example, the pull out absolutely happy. Performance, we don't need to talk about it. It's super fast. And for example, you can see maybe I'm using Luma Fusion. Costed about $21, but I think it was totally worth it because it's a video editor. I'm not gonna show that too much because we don't need to, but it renders a video actually in some ways quicker than my Threadripper 1950X, which kind of makes no sense. So I'm not quite sure how they optimized it that well, but the performance on this thing is absolutely crazy good. I mean, yes, due to the RAM, if you have a lot of apps open, it still sometimes has to reload, but usually if you just use 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 apps, it's totally fine. So I'm super happy with the performance. Now, battery life. It charges in, I don't really know how long because I didn't care. I actually, to be completely honest, never once used the original charger because I plugged it in at a place where I usually don't charge the iPad, because what I used is my laptop charger. That is the cool thing now of USB Type-C, so I used the normal power delivery USB charger and it definitely took well under 2 hours. So I would say maybe a little bit over 1.5 hours. So let's say roughly 2 hours. That's for this battery life really good, because what I got here about, I would say 9 hours straight of YouTube watching with a brightness of about 60%. I think that's good. I mean, like I said, I would have liked it for even be bigger and then maybe reach 10, 11, even 12 hours. That would have been absolutely killer. I mean, it totally gets me through the longest days because, I mean, 8-9 hours, and usually you will get even less if you just take down the brightness a little bit. It will take up quite a lot, but super happy with the battery life, especially you all know that by now iOS standby rain pretty much not a thing, so super happy in that regard. Now, software wise, we don't really need to talk much about it. I still don't like the limitations, which also has to do with the USB Type-C port, because I mean, file browsers, yeah, the normal one you can forget, and then there are just some limitations. I'm not gonna go into the fact that we can't rearrange the icons. That is a super, yeah, unfortunate thing, but it just is the way, and yeah, something to get used to. I actually have most of mine here. It works fine, and I just have to say, compared to the Android tablets that I've used, the quality of those apps is usually a little bit better. But you usually also have to pay a lot more, because, for example, just the Note app, the Notability app costed 12 or 11 euros. Then Luma Fusion costed 12. For the File Explorer, I had to pay a little bit, but I bought that already years ago. And the rest was pretty much free. But yeah, you just need high quality apps. You need to pay more. But limitations. No proper File Explorer still. And even if, for example, if you use File Explorer, which actually allows to use network devices and everything else, because I have it hooked up to my NAS, works just fine. Actually, my server, not my NAS. Woo. And it's still not the same, because I complained about it, especially on the iPhones, that you can't just download things. I covered that issue real quick with this app, which is my absolute favorite browser, because I needed a better browser than Safari, Chrome, Firefox anyways, which you can see that I still have. But Mercury browser, which is what I use on my iPad Air 2, doesn't exist anymore. You can't download it. There was no way to get it. So I searched for something as an alternative and actually found something better, which is called iCap Online or something like that. It costed also like $6 or so, but it was so worth it, because with that one, as you can see, you can actually download files just normally from pretty much any site. Top. So it got what it also allows for you to split the window in 2 sides. The performance is absolutely, I mean, it's using the same engine. It's absolutely great. Allows for split window, allows for Firefox sync option, which is the most important thing for me, which I didn't even expect, because on Mercury I had to do all of them manually, but on this one actually it supports Firefox sync, and which is my default browser on my PC, and this syncs with that, so that's out of the way. Then there are some issues that just came along with that. It's a little bit harder that I don't want to get into, but there are limitations for the software. But just for example, note-taking app, as you can see here, I will actually read those all later on. That are my notes that I just quickly did for the iPad Pro. Then there are also, for example, other ones, like for example Nebo, which is a quite handy app, because that one, what it does really good is does this. If you write something, it translates it directly. So let's try this. This is a test. And you can also, obviously, as a preview, have it also showing up what it would actually translate to. But as you can see, it didn't get it right because I was actually way too close. So let's actually get back. Let's just do it again with a little bit less of a difference. But as you can see, I don't have a pretty nice handwriting, and it works really, really good. I mean, Notability can do something similar. We can actually try this real quick. So let's try to do the same here, just so you can see that. That one also actually supports, as you can see, the double tap, which is something that I found very handy because yeah. But it works in Nebo as well. But these were my most convenient apps. So what you have to do here to actually get text translated is this. Then you tap, then you select it, and then you can either just copy what you did in the clipboard, which is super handy because this way you can even import it into OneNote or Google Docs, or you just can change it and change the color, fonts, and so on. So really handy app. Now what I wanted to, but I didn't find it, I wanted a note-taking app that works cross-platform, so also on Windows and so on. And OneNote is the only one that pretty much does this from what I found, but OneNote is totally not good because, as you can see here, there is, if we go, let's actually open a new one. So if I now want to write, I mean, the delay actually got better now. It was even worse for a while now, but it can translate texts in my handwritten text. So yeah. To sum it up about the software, you need to know what you can do with it. That's the important part, because my issues are mostly fixed. I can now use a file explorer and I can download files and I have Firefox sync. So for me, it pretty much replaces what I usually do with a laptop. I browse, I can do this here. I use it, for example, also replying to all of my YouTube comments, works here, watch Netflix all the time, watch YouTube all the time, listen to my podcasts, do my notes by now, which I will also use later on in this part to tell you the pros and cons and such things. That is super handy. LumaFusion, which is what I will use on CS to edit my videos, which it actually does really well in terms of performance, and I can do whatever I want to. Now, what can't you do? What you can't do that well is, for example, just hook up a USB mesh device or mesh storage device, so a USB drive or something like that. That just simply does not work because the system doesn't support it. And I think it's on purpose to kind of keep a wall between macOS and iOS so that you simply can't do everything the same way. I mean, you can use, like what I'm, for example, doing is use a network drive, and that works pretty much as I would like it to, but that's just not quite as quick as and not as convenient as just using a USB drive. So that is unfortunate. It will maybe come in the future, but I don't see this to be a close future anyway, other else. Then, for example, if you use the USB Type-C port for a monitor, the problem is you don't have mouse support. That is the big issue. So what's it worth to having it on a bigger screen if you still need to use the touch screen? And most apps don't support it anyways. And just in terms of the cameras, too, real quick, but I'm not going to show this. The back camera is actually pretty nice, even though I wouldn't use it. And I don't like that it sticks out. I would still prefer for this to be completely flat. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The one on the front is good enough for FaceTime and such things, but it needs a lot of light. Because even in the studio light like here, yeah, it was quite grainy. So let's actually already get into my notes. And since these are in English, we can actually check them. And by now, you can see... I mean, one thing that I have to say about the pen, it does not feel like writing on paper like it does on some actual Windows tablet. So that's a little bit sad, but you can write on it pretty nicely, even though I don't have the prettiest handwriting. But let's actually see what I wrote down in terms of pros and cons. Gorgeous design. It's thin, light, and compact. True. Brilliant speakers, 120 Hz display, a super high quality one, absolutely love it. I mean, harass could be sharper, but I don't mind it. Super performance, brutally smooth, that's the big part due to the 120 Hz. Then pretty good battery life, could have been even better, but still fine. Gesture navigation works well, and I would actually have to put a super in front of that because I so like the ability to switch between apps. Also, for example, the way, and you can also do, for example, this. Then you have split view in both sides, which is pretty nice. You can also once again do this, have it overlay. I mean, it doesn't work with all apps, which is super unfortunate, and especially apps, obviously the Google apps aren't even optimized for this kind of new format yet. We still have the black bars, and so that is actually also a con, but I'll get into that maybe a little bit later. Then using it just feels cool and futuristic, just because it's so thin. The pen works pretty seamlessly. You can attach it. The whole way that navigation was gestures that, well, I mean, you have to get a little bit used to it, for example, for the fact that if you do a small swipe to get the dock, then you just swipe a little bit longer, and then you have to lift off to get to those, or you just do it all the way for home, and then you have those 3 and 4 finger gestures and so on. But Once you get used to it, which takes maybe sometimes a little bit of a while, but since I've used the old one for a long time already, I'm fine with that. But it is so nice, and it's definitely the best usage for a tablet, because you don't have to look for buttons and so on. I absolutely love that. And yeah, maybe not everyone will agree, but it still beats any Android tablet out there. And it's, in my opinion, just the most premium tablet. We have to emphasize on tablet experience, because most premium does not mean it's the best tablet experience. Now, what do I have in terms of comps? It seems quite fragile, but it doesn't feel like it though, which means it feels solid, but we've all seen that it bends. Then display might be higher res, okay, but display looks nasty all the time. You can already maybe see this here. Due to the coating, maybe to prevent it to be too slippery with the pen or for reflection reasons or so, but this display looks about as nasty as my iPad Air 2 did after all the oleophobic coating was gone, like after 3 years. This already out of the box does that, which is a little bit unfortunate to see. Then OS has its limitations on purpose, maybe, I don't know, because like I said, no mouse support, which is a big thing. Because to properly replace a laptop, you don't just need USB storage devices or monitor support and so on. You need a mouse, and we won't get this, I think, ever on an iPad. At least, yeah, that's what I think. Now, still no real file browser. We have, I don't really know why they call it files. If it's not really at all a file browser. Like I said, no USB storage support, no mouse support, no headphone jack. Now, this is a big thing for the musicians, because I've heard in the past so many people telling me that this is so great of a music production device. Which might be the case, but how are you supposed to actually, without any latency, listen to your sound? I mean, if you have the dongle in, you will definitely need sometimes maybe a microphone or other devices on it, which means you definitely need to use a dongle that actually also has a headphone jack output. So that's a pretty bad thing, especially since it couldn't be an issue not to just integrate it. So that's a big no-no. But for me, it's not a thing, since I don't do that kind of work, so I didn't mind it. Accessories pretty expensive still, because the keyboard, the original one, costs 200, where for example this one that I have just costs 30 bucks. And I mean, it gets it done, maybe not quite as easy, because the whole combo with the keyboard here and the case and the iPad is about 1050, so 1 kilogram and 50 grams. Not super lightweight, because my 12.5 inch laptop is pretty much the same, so it's not super lightweight anymore, but still it's more comfortable. And the tablet with 470 grams is still, after all, super light and portable and so on. And if you use a thinner case, fine. Then, not really any good accessories available yet. This is an issue for me. What I'm actually waiting for is the Bridge keyboard dock. That one I would be okay paying about 200 for, if it's as good as it's supposed to be. But for now, what I have is fine. But I didn't really find much on eBay or on Amazon just yet. Then kinda over the top expensive. I mean, it's a premium device in my opinion. Longer Face ID range would have been awesome, and the camera, like I said, is in the wrong position. You can't go home with the pencil. That is something that bothers me, because if I write and sometimes as well as switch the app or so, I can't do this. Also not here. Okay, that actually writes, yeah, because you can't do this, you can't do this, and you can't do home, which, oh, I actually got an update. Don't need that right now. So that's a little bit unfortunate, because you have to use your hands for. Maybe it makes sense in some reason, but maybe I'm just missing it. And then YouTube Max is 1080p. I mean, at least 1440p would have been nice as an option, because this display is 1440p in terms of resolution, at least in terms of height. So it's not per se 2560, but they could have used it and then maybe just scale it. Charge, like I didn't check. YouTube, I would say, like I said, 9 hours for a total use. Maximum brightness, I didn't measure this time. Battery life, yeah, we can actually cover this. 9 hours, like I said. 10 plus would be awesome if with a bigger, but doesn't matter. So for who is it then? If it's not for all the people who need a proper Windows or, let's say, desktop operating system. In my opinion, it's in one way, at least for one side of people, a luxury premium consumption device, which is what it was for me at first, because I knew what I did with the iPad Air 2 was nothing else than watching Netflix, watching YouTube, sometimes listening to a podcast, browsing a little bit, and sometimes reading emails and also answering to the YouTube comments. That's mostly what I did, and this one did it as well. And the new iPad would have done it as well as too. But I wanted a high quality premium experience. I wanted the faster device. I wanted the smaller, nicer chassis. I wanted the more future-proof port maybe in the future. I wanted just those things. And I was willing to spend that. And actually, when the iPod 10.5 came out, or the Pro 9.7, I wasn't willing to pay that price, and this one is even more so expensive, and I did it after all anyways, because I knew I've used this since release, and it still does a quite good job. I mean, performance isn't quite as good anymore, but it still works, and it would still do what I needed to do. But this just takes everything a step higher, multiple steps actually, and after all I thought, I'm gonna use this much more than I would use a laptop. I mean, I've used my iPad way more than my laptop, and for what I needed to, it is, even though it's super expensive, after all worth it, because I paid like $750 for the iPad. I paid like 110 for this, so let's say roughly 860 euros with the case, 900 euros. I'm pretty much done now. 900 euros is a lot of money. You can get better laptops already out there, but that's not comparable. It's way bigger than, and I don't see this to be a laptop replacement. I mean, for some people it absolutely might be, but it's so different from a standpoint of how you use it, with so much more touch and not having a mouse and so on, no trackpad, and that I don't see it being necessary as an option. But also, like I said, for people like musicians, artists, people who write all the time, and even people who do YouTube videos. For example, LumaFusion is a very powerful editor. Obviously not super in-depth like some people that use Adobe Premiere with 20 timelines or something like that, but totally gets the bare minimum job done. Actually, a little bit, way more actually, because my bare minimal editing with this, if I would have that on my desktop, I would actually use it because it's so simple and it works. Now, for who is it not? Or the question is, why not just get the regular iPad? Like I already answered, if you want just a faster, better, more premium experience and just want to pay for that. That's why. Now, where did so many reviewers, in my opinion, fail? Well, they just saw their own perspective. Because, I mean, I've seen so many people, even though I have to also say I saw people who said I've been using, and I think the best example, the popular one, is Jaime Rivera. He said he needs an iPad because of all his scripts and what he uses it for preparations for his video. Which makes it a pro device, because what does pro even mean? Is pro for productivity? Is it for professional use? Or is it just pro that you can call it a better iPad? In some way you could maybe even call it an iPad Premium instead of an iPad Pro. But if it does pro work for you, productive work or professional, doesn't matter. But if it gets the job done, for example, I use this now, as you have seen, for my notes, and I've used this in the last few videos already. It was super handy for me. So for me, it was productive. It helped me a lot to keep my not that great memory in check, so I can follow things a little bit better, to just think of everything that I wanted to say. And even though it's maybe not the most elegant solution on video, it helps me. It makes, in my opinion, at least the content in terms of quality better. Other people can do it in another way. And for example, an artist, if he can draw everything he wants to do this, it's a pro device. If a musician can make all his tracks with this, it's a pro device. If you write all your scripts with this, it's a pro device. So for a certain group of people, that's the usual old Apple saying, just works. Because I had no hiccups with the systems. Obviously, sometimes you have to work around things. That's something that we can't deny. There's no doubt about that. But just because it's not on Mac OS or on Windows OS, and you need that, you can't just say that this thing is useless. If you are especially useful, I mean, there are so many people out there who use a phone for everything. They don't even have a laptop or a PC. And those people will be able to do everything what they can do on the phone, obviously here with well. And let's just not forget, this thing is super powerful. I've seen this on the video editing and super crazy smooth and everything else. So this is where my standpoint is. But of course, for example, there was someone just recently commenting me and told me, don't believe anything he says, for example, on my Surface Book 2 review, because he bashed the Surface Book 2 quite heavy, but then he bought an iPad Pro. You can't trust this guy. This is because I am not someone for who the Surface Book 2 works. For me, it was way too big, way too clumsy. Just the tablet was huge and unusable. I didn't like the whole functionality. I am someone, at least for what I do with the iPad, where the iPad just works way better than a laptop. And therefore, for me, in many situations, by now it can replace a laptop. Not in all situations, because sometimes I just need multitasking with apps that I simply don't have here. I could obviously do this on the PC, and I wouldn't need a laptop per se anymore, because this for me works. Maybe not 100%, and sometimes it's a little bit less convenient, but so much more often it is just way more convenient, and that's where my standpoint is. Now, I don't know if I covered everything the way you wanted to, but let me know if you think that it might make sense what I've said, because so many people saw this so narrow-minded. I tried to see the whole picture, what this is, what it isn't, what it can do, what it can't do, and how good it does it. Okay? Okay. Until next time. Bye.